these fish to jump out of the water. It's a defense mechanism that the fish have to get away from danger.
The spread of Asian carp throughout the state, prevalent in our larger river systems.
The Mississippi River is currently the site of the biggest biological street fight on Earth. For years, it looked like we were losing. A silver wave of invasive Asian carp was taking over, out-eating native fish and spreading like wildfire through America's heartland. You might have seen the videos of them leaping into boats. The next day, gone, and it's a reality unfolding in the deep. The unexpected predator isn't a new monster. It's the original residents of the river finally hitting back. Are the river's true kings finally taking their throne back? The apex cleaners. Humans thought we were the only ones who could stop the carp for decades. We built electric fences in the water. We used nets and sound cannons. But while we were busy engineering solutions, nature was busy training its champions. The heaviest hitter in this fight is a fish that looks like it belongs in a museum of natural history rather than a modern river. This is the alligator gar. The alligator gar is a beast of pure muscle and armored scales. It has been swimming in North American waters for over 100 million years. It saw the dinosaurs go extinct and didn't blink. But by the mid-20th century, humans had almost wiped them out. We thought they were trash fish that ate our prized bass. We were wrong. In the early 2000s, as silver and bighead carp began to clog the Mississippi, biologists realized they had made a massive mistake. We had removed the only local predator large enough to act as a bouncer for the river. Now, the gar is back. States like Illinois and Kentucky have started massive reintroduction programs. They are breeding these prehistoric giants in hatcheries and releasing them into the war zones where carp are most thick. And the results are stunning. An adult alligator gar can grow to 10 feet long. They weigh more than 3 adult men. When a 60-pound silver carp swims past a gar, it isn't an annoyance anymore. It is lunch. The gar doesn't care about the carp's speed or its tendency to jump. The gar is an ambush predator. It sits perfectly still, looking like a sunken log, until the moment of the strike. The strike of an alligator gar is one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. They have a long, wide snout filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. When they snap their jaws shut, it creates a vacuum that pulls the prey in. Because their scales are made of ganoin, a material similar to the enamel on your teeth, they are essentially wearing a suit of armor. The frantic thrashing of a silver carp can't hurt them. For the first time in 50 years, the Asian carp has a reason to be afraid. The gar are patrolling the deep channels, and they are reclaiming the territory we once let slip away. But it isn't just about the gar eating the fish. It is about the ecology of fear. When a top predator enters a room, everyone else changes how they act. Before the gar returned, Asian carp had it easy. They would gather in massive schools and eat all the plankton, leaving nothing for the native fish. They were bold. They were everywhere. Now, in areas where gar have been reintroduced, the carp behavior is shifting. They are being forced into shallower, less ideal waters to avoid the titans in the deep. This makes them more vulnerable to other threats and slows down their ability to spawn. Researchers tracking these fish with radio tags have seen incredible things. They have found hotspots where gar congregates. These spots usually overlap with the exact areas where silver carp try to gather to survive the winter. By placing these native titans back into the ecosystem, we aren't just adding a fish to a river. We are restoring a balance that was broken long ago. The gar is the heavy artillery. It is the only native fish capable of taking down a full-grown, jumping carp in a one-on-one fight. The reintroduction of the gar is a lesson in humility for humans. We spent millions trying to invent a carp killer machine. It turns out nature had already built one 100 million years ago. We just had to stop killing it. As the gar population grows, the silver tide begins to recede. Every 200-pound gar in the water represents thousands of carp that will never get the chance to breed. The titans are back on the clock, and they are very, very hungry for the invaders. But can one giant species carry the weight of an entire river system on its back? The hidden gorillas. While the alligator gar acts as the heavy tank of the river, a much more secretive war is being fought in the reeds, the mud, and the shallow backwaters. If the gar is the heavy artillery, then the hidden guerrillas are the special forces. To truly understand why Asian carp populations are starting to crater, you have to look at the predators that don't make the front page of the news. We are talking about the blue catfish, the bowfin, and a surprising army of birds that have all decided that Asian carp is the new favorite item on the menu. For a long time, scientists were worried. They thought that because Asian carp grew so fast, they would quickly become too big to eat for most native fish. A silver carp can go from a tiny egg to a foot-long fish in what feels like the blink of an eye. In those early years of the invasion, our local fish like the largemouth bass or the walleye didn't really know what to do with them. Predators usually need time to learn how to hunt a new species. They need to figure out how it moves, where it hides, and if it tastes good. In the world of biology, this is called a learning curve. In the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, that curve has finally spiked. The blue catfish is perhaps the most effective guerrilla in this fight. These aren't your average pond cats. They are massive, aggressive hunters that can grow to over 100 pounds. Unlike other fish that might be picky, a blue cat is a living vacuum cleaner with a bad attitude. In the last few years, fishermen and researchers have been opening up the stomachs of these catfish and finding something incredible. They are stuffed to the gills with juvenile Asian carp. The catfish have figured out the silver wave. They have learned to sit at the edges of the massive carp schools and pick off the weak, the slow, and the small. By targeting the teenagers of the carp world, the blue catfish are stopping the next generation of invaders before they ever get a chance to spawn. Then there is the bowfin. If the alligator gar is a dinosaur, the bowfin is its mean little brother. Also known as the dogfish or mudpike, the bowfin is a native survivor that can breathe air and live in water that would kill other fish.
That is the skull of a bowfin. It's completely constructed of bone, but what you definitely notice are those incredibly long, sharp teeth.
They are incredibly territorial and have a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth designed for gripping slippery prey. For years, the bowfin was ignored. But as Asian carp moved into the swampy backwaters where bowfin rule, a conflict began. The bowfin didn't move out. They stayed and fought. They have become one of the most consistent predators of young carp in the shallow zones where the titans can't reach. They are the gatekeepers of the wetlands, ensuring that the carp can't find a safe haven to grow. But the pressure isn't just coming from under the surface. If you look up, you'll see the air-to-water division of the resistance. This is where the story gets really interesting for younger audiences who love a good nature documentary. The jumping behavior of the silver carp, the very thing that made them famous on YouTube, has turned out to be a massive biological mistake. When these fish fly out of the water, they aren't just hitting boaters in the face, they are announcing their location to every bird of prey within 5 miles. Bald eagles and ospreys have learned the dinner bell of the boat motor. In places like the Illinois River, you can actually watch eagles perched in trees, waiting for a boat to pass by. As the boat motor agitates the water, the silver carp start their frantic jumping. To an eagle, this is like a flying buffet. They swoop down and snatch the carp mid-air, or right off the surface, with zero effort. We are seeing a massive shift in bird behavior where some populations of bald eagles are now almost entirely sustained by the invasive carp. Even great blue herons, usually known for standing still and waiting for minnows, have been seen wrestling with small carp in the shallows. What we are witnessing is a multi-front war. The Asian carp are being squeezed from the bottom by the catfish, from the sides by the bowfin, and from the top by the eagles. This constant pressure is exhausting for a species. When you are constantly being hunted, you spend less time eating and less time reproducing. You spend all your energy just trying to stay alive. This pressure is a key reason why the massive, unstoppable schools of the 2010s are starting to look much thinner now. The most exciting part for biologists is that this isn't a human intervention. It's the ecosystem waking up. It's the sound of a billion-year-old system finding a way to balance itself out. The native species have stopped being victims of the invasion and have started seeing it as an opportunity. They are turning the silver tide into a massive source of protein that is actually making our native predators bigger, stronger, and more numerous than they have been in decades. Evolutionary adaptation. While it is one thing for a predator to eat a new kind of food, it is an entirely different thing for a whole ecosystem to rewrite its DNA to hunt an invader. This is the evolutionary arms race, and currently, we are watching it happen in real time. We have to look at the biological upgrade that American river life is undergoing. The Asian carp didn't just bring a new face to the river. They brought a massive explosion of calories. In nature, calories are the ultimate currency, and the native residents are finally figuring out how to cash in. Evolution usually takes millions of years, but behavioral evolution can happen in just a few generations. When we say the real predator was unexpected, we are talking about the way native fish are physically changing how they live to exploit the carp. Take the largemouth bass, for example. For a long time, the bass was considered too small to be a threat to the carp invasion. But nature finds a way. In the backwaters of the Tennessee River, biologists have observed a fascinating shift. The bass are no longer just sitting in the weeds waiting for a dragonfly. They are beginning to hunt in wolf packs, a behavior rarely seen in such intensity before the carp arrived. They have learned that by schooling together, they can corral thousands of tiny carp fry into the shallows, turning a massive school of invaders into an easy-access snack bar. This shift in behavior is causing a physical change in the native fish. Because Asian carp are so high in fat and protein,
as far as the nutritional benefits of Asian carp, they rank among the highest of all fish in dietary protein. These fish are also among the highest in heart-healthy omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids.
Much more so than the native shad or minnows, the fish that eat them are getting bigger faster. We are seeing super bass and monster cats reaching record-breaking weights in half the time it used to take. This creates a positive feedback loop. The more carp the native fish eat, the bigger the native fish get. The bigger they get, the larger the carp they can hunt. This cycle is slowly tilting the scales. The silver tide isn't just being eaten. It's being used as fuel to build a stronger, more aggressive army of native predators. But the adaptation isn't just happening in the predators, it's happening in the very chemistry of the water. This is where the story gets a bit sci-fi. Every living thing leaks DNA into its environment. It's called eDNA, environmental DNA.
eDNA is short for environmental DNA. Organisms living in it, like this fish, constantly lose genetic material which is found in excrements or shed skin cells, and those contain DNA.
For years, humans used eDNA to track where the carp were moving. But now, it appears the native fish are using their own biosensors to do the same thing. Native predators are becoming tuned to the chemical signature of Asian carp. A walleye or a northern pike can now sense the presence of a silver carp school from miles away because their olfactory systems, their sense of smell, have adapted to recognize this specific foreign scent as a priority target. This is a massive psychological blow to the invasive carp. When a species invades a new place, it usually succeeds because it is invisible to the local hunters. It's like a stealth bomber flying under the radar. But now, the radar has been upgraded. The stealth is gone. The Asian carp are now the most visible fish in the river, chemically and physically. They have gone from being the invaders who owned the river to being the most wanted targets on the map. This pressure is causing the carp to stay in deeper, colder water where it is harder for them to grow and spawn, effectively shrinking their habitat without humans ever lifting a finger. Furthermore, we have to talk about the trophic cascade. This is a fancy term for a domino effect. When the native predators start winning, the whole river gets healthier. Because the carp are being suppressed by this new wave of hunting, the plankton levels in the rivers are starting to bounce back. This means the smaller, peaceful native fish, the ones that the carp were originally starving out, now have enough food to grow their own populations. A river with more native bait fish attracts even more predators. The ecosystem is essentially re-arming itself. It is building a wall made of teeth and scales. The most unexpected part of this adaptation is how the river is using the carp's own biology against them. Silver carp are sensitive to sound and vibration. That's why they jump. But that sensitivity is now a liability. Native predators like the flathead catfish have learned to use vibration hunting. They can feel the frantic, high-frequency thrum of a nervous carp school from deep within the mud. They don't even need to see the carp. They just follow the noise of the carp's own fear. The invader's greatest survival tool has become its GPS tracker for every hungry mouth in the area. The data is clear now. The silver wave has hit a wall of native muscle. The carp are no longer the only ones growing and spreading. The Mississippi, the Ohio, and the Missouri rivers are no longer victim rivers. They are active battlegrounds where the home team is finally winning. The real predator wasn't just one fish or one bird. It was the entire American ecosystem finally waking up and realizing that the invaders weren't just a threat. They were the biggest meal in a century. Is it possible that the very abundance of the carp has become their greatest weakness? The carp rebranding. The war against Asian carp, now widely known by the market-friendly name Kopi, has moved from a desperate scramble to a calculated industrial siege. We aren't just hoping nature wins anymore. We are providing the heavy machinery to ensure it happens. This year marks a turning point where the disappearance of the carp moved from a biological theory to a measurable statistical fact in several key American watersheds. The most significant development is the completion of the Brandon Road Lock and Dam project. Located near Joliet, Illinois, this is essentially the Fort Knox of river ecology. For a decade, the Great Lakes, the largest freshwater system on Earth, were under direct threat. If the carp breached the Chicago area waterway system, the $7 billion fishing industry in the lakes would have collapsed. But the update is a victory. The Great Wall of Bubbles is holding. This billion-dollar barrier uses a layered defense strategy. It combines an electric picket fence that gives fish a non-lethal sting, an acoustic curtain that blasts sounds carp find painful, and a sophisticated bubble curtain that prevents small fish from hitching a ride in the wake of passing barges. But the real predator isn't a machine. It's the global market. The rebranding of Asian carp to Kopi was once laughed at as a PR stunt, but today it is a supply chain miracle. By changing the name, the government successfully removed the stigma of eating a trash fish. In 2026, Kopi is no longer just a weird item on a specialty menu. It is a massive export. American-caught Kopi is now being shipped in massive quantities to international markets, where carp is a prized protein. Even more importantly, the domestic pet food industry has swallowed the invasion. Major brands have realized that Kopi is higher in omega-3 fatty acids and lower in mercury than many ocean-caught fish. By turning the silver wave into dog treats, we have created a financial incentive for commercial fishermen to remove over 20 million pounds of fish annually from the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. This human predation has led to the first recorded population crashes in the heartland. In some sections of the Illinois River, where the water used to be more fish than water, the biomass of Asian carp has dropped by nearly 40% since 2022. This is a staggering number. It means the tipping point has been reached. When you combine the massive commercial harvest with the native predators we discussed earlier, the carp can no longer out-reproduce their losses. The unlimited population has finally found its limit. Technologically, this year has also brought us the molecular sniper. Scientists are now using advanced eDNA mapping that provides real-time heat maps of carp movement. 5 years ago, we had to wait weeks for lab results to know if a carp was in a specific creek. Today, handheld sensors used by citizen scientists and river patrols can detect a single silver carp's presence in under 10 minutes. This allows for targeted striking. Instead of netting an entire river, wildlife officials can pinpoint the exact 100-yard stretch where a school is hiding and remove them with surgical precision. Furthermore, the Trojan Y chromosome project has moved out of the lab and into controlled field trials. This is the ultimate hidden predator. By releasing specially bred carp that can only produce male offspring, scientists are effectively breaking the reproductive cycle from the inside out. In smaller, closed-off lake systems in 2026, we are seeing the first ghost populations, schools of carp where there are no females left. These populations are destined to vanish naturally within a decade without a single net being cast. However, the update isn't just about killing fish, it's about the great recovery. Because the copy numbers are plummeting, we are seeing the return of the big three native species: the paddlefish, the bigmouth buffalo, and the bluesucker. These fish were nearly starved into extinction by the carp. Now, with the plankton levels rebounding across the Mississippi basin, these native giants are having their best spawning years since the 70s. The river is clearing up. The water is becoming less turbid. The wave is being replaced by the native pulse. We are also seeing a shift in the human element. The carp festivals that used to be about mocking the invasion have turned into harvest festivals, celebrating a sustainable resource. The message to the younger generation has changed from "watch out for the jumping fish" to "help us manage the river." This cultural shift is the final nail in the coffin for the invasion. When a society stops fearing a pest and starts viewing it as a harvestable crop, that pest's days are numbered. The data confirms that the invasion peak is behind us. While the carp will likely never be 100% gone, they are too hardy and too widespread for total extinction. They are no longer the kings of the river. They have been demoted. They are now just another part of the food chain, a high-protein snack for a river system that has finally learned how to fight back. The predator was a combination of everything: the ancient gar, the hungry catfish, the sharp-eyed eagle, the industrial fisherman, and the kid buying a Kopi burger at a local stand. The river didn't just survive, it evolved. But to know where we're going, we have to understand the strange accidental path that brought these invaders to our doorstep in the first place. Ghost of the Yangtze. To understand how a fish from the other side of the planet managed to conquer the American heartland, we have to travel back to the 70s. It is a classic story of good intentions, bad consequences. The Asian carp, specifically the silver, bighead, grass, and black varieties, didn't arrive in the U.S. as hidden stowaways in the ballast water of a ship. They were invited, they were flown in, welcomed, and put to work.
And they breed like Asian carp. Imported as a farmed species in the 1970s, bighead and silver carp from China were first seen as a way to produce cheap food.
This was the era of the Green Revolution, a time when scientists were looking for biological solutions to chemical problems. At the time, sewage treatment plants and catfish farms in the American South were struggling with a massive algae problem. The water was thick, green, and stagnant. Instead of dumping heavy chemicals into the water, which was the standard practice, someone had a brilliant idea. Why not use nature's vacuum cleaners? In their native home in the Yangtze and Pearl Rivers of China, these carp were legendary for their ability to filter feed. They could eat their own weight in algae and plankton every single day. They were the ultimate organic cleaning crew. In 1973, the first bighead and silver carp were imported to Arkansas. For a few years, the plan worked perfectly. The fish stayed in their ponds, the water cleared up, and the farmers were happy. But nature doesn't like to be contained. During the massive floods of the 80s and 90s, the Mississippi River swelled to historic levels, overtopping the walls of these private ponds and fish farms. In the chaos of the rising water, the cleaning crew escaped. They didn't just find a new home, they found a paradise. The Mississippi River Basin is essentially a 2,000-mile-long buffet. In China, these carp are kept in check by natural predators and intense human fishing. In America, they found a river system with no natural enemies and a nearly infinite supply of food. They began to move north, spawning at an incredible rate. A single female silver carp can release up to 5 million eggs a year. By the late 90s, the ghost of the Yangtze had become a physical wall of silver muscle moving toward the Great Lakes. They weren't just eating the algae anymore, they were stripping the entire food web from the bottom up. It reminds us that the invader isn't a villain. It's just a biological machine doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem was that we put that machine in a world without a stop button. We ignored the history of the fish in its homeland, where it is a respected and controlled part of the ecosystem, and treated it like a tool. That tool eventually broke out of the shed and took over the whole house. Understanding this history is vital because it teaches us that the real predator we've been waiting for, the one that is finally stopping them, isn't just a fish. It's the restoration of an ecological balance we accidentally destroyed 50 years ago. If the past was an accident and the present is a counterattack, could the future be a total biological rewrite? The molecular predator. As we look toward the horizon beyond, the final chapter of the Asian carp story isn't being written with nets or teeth, but with code. We are entering the age of the molecular predator. While the alligator gar and the commercial fishing industry are doing the heavy lifting in the rivers today, scientists are working on a way to end the invasion using the carp's own DNA. This is the Trojan horse of the 21st century, a biological solution that doesn't kill the fish, but ensures they can no longer exist. The most cutting-edge tool in this fight is something called genetic biocontrol. We've already mentioned the Trojan Y chromosome, but the future goes much deeper. Researchers are experimenting with a technique called a gene drive. By using CRISPR technology, a tool that allows scientists to cut and paste DNA, they can create a specific genetic trait that is guaranteed to be passed down to every single offspring. Imagine a gene that makes the fish unable to survive in cold water, or a gene that prevents them from developing the muscles they need to jump and spawn. Once these engineered fish are released into the wild, the trait spreads through the population like a virus. This is the ultimate unexpected predator. It is a predator that lives inside the fish's own cells. It doesn't hunt them with claws, it hunts them with mathematics. Within a few generations, a massive, thriving population of millions can simply stop. It is a clean, quiet, and incredibly effective way to manage an invasive species without harming the native fish around them. Because the gene is species-specific, a gene drive designed for silver carp wouldn't affect a blue catfish or a paddlefish. It is the world's first smart weapon for ecology. The first small-scale trials of these molecular tools have shown a 90% success rate in isolated ponds. As we move forward, the disappearing act of the Asian carp will likely accelerate. We are moving toward a future where invasive species might become a thing of the past. We have learned that we cannot just fight nature with brute force. We have to work with it. We have to use the river's own giants, the market's own hunger, and the cell's own code to protect our water. The story of the Asian carp in America is an epic of survival, error, and redemption. It started with a green pond in Arkansas and is ending with a high-tech victory for the Great Lakes. The real predator wasn't just one thing. It was the moment we decided to stop being the victim of the invasion and started being the architects of the recovery. The silver wave is finally breaking, and for the first time in half a century, the American river is starting to look like itself again. The kings have returned, the humans have stepped up, and the invaders are running out of places to hide. Hit subscribe to stay on the pulse of the greatest wildlife comebacks on the planet. Thanks for watching.